Hi, this is Scott with 4D Tech. Today we are in a 20 plus Ford Escape that came equipped with a 4-inch screen. We will be showing you how to install our 4-inch to 8-inch conversion for this vehicle. The 4-inch to 8-inch conversion comes pre-programmed custom for your vehicle. It will retain all your current features, including your camera, Ford Pass, Sirius XM, or any other on-screen features. You'll need a few basic tools for performing this installation. You'll need a couple socket wrenches with a 7mm and 8mm. Standard number 2 Phillips screwdriver. 7mm nut driver is handy as well, along with plastic dash removal tools. The nut driver and plastic dash removal tools are available on our website for your convenience. Let's get started. First, we'll need to remove this small trim panel behind the screen to expose the mounting screws. We'll need to pry up on the trim panel between it and the dash. This dash is soft, so you're going to want to be a little careful, but the clips can be tight. So once we get that popped out, we next need to remove these 3 screws holding the screen in. With the 3 screws removed, you'll lift straight up on the screen to take it out of the opening. Flip it around and we'll need to disconnect this connector right here. There's a little release tab, and then you slide the connector out. You'll want to be careful of these metal brackets around the soft dash. Next, we'll need to be able to remove this trim panel across here with the controls, but first these 2 screws have to come out. With those 2 screws out, next we need to remove this trim panel that goes across the front of the dash. We'll start unclipping it from this end, but you want to be careful as you get to the thinner portion. You can use the plastic dash removal tool as a twisting motion to get the clips to release. On the back of the panel will be a single connector right here. You'll push the release tab on the top of it and then set the panel out of the way. Next, we need to remove this vent set right here by taking out these 2 screws. Once the screws are out, you'll just pull the vents forward. And then you'll need to disconnect this single connector right here for the hazard switch. Removing these exposes 2 screws that are here that go down into lower heater controls. Those need to be removed. Next, we need to remove the console pieces to gain access to fasteners up here. First, this panel needs to come out of the middle. To do this, we need to release tabs on the front edge here by sliding our dash removal tool in here and twisting to pop. There's a secondary catch and there's little tabs right here that you may need to push in on to get it past. Once you do that, push the console piece forward a little to get those the rest of the way out. Tilt it out of the way, and then we need to disconnect these 3 connectors here. This one has a lever lock, so you push the little release tab there, open the lever all the way, and unplug it. This one has a tab on the bottom. We push that in and unplug it as well, and then this one has a tab on the top side. Click that and unplug that one, and we'll set this piece out of the way. Next, we need to take these side pieces off the console. We'll start with the passenger side, and we just start pushing out to release all the tabs. You can get it started by going in this opening and twisting on the first tab, and use your hand to work the rest of the way back. You want to get in between the seat here, in between the panel and the console, and release all the clips and slide the panel out between the seat and the console first, and then slide back. Now we need to remove a single 8mm screw that's behind this cover panel down by the gas pedal. First, we'll pop the cover panel off, and then remove the bolts that's behind there. With that bolt removed, this side panel comes off the same way the passenger side one did. Now we'll need to remove these 2 silver screws on each side of here. And then there's an identical one on this side. With those screws removed, we'll pop up this panel. Swing it out of the way, and we'll need to disconnect this USB cable on the back of the hub, and then this connector on the side of the console here. You push the little button on the back side of it to unplug it, and then you need to release this clip right here that's holding it. Now we'll remove this under dash plate here by going between the heater control panel and the plate. It's a little recessed, but once you get a spot where you can get in between it and get the tool in there, you can get the clips released. Then we need to remove 2 screws that are back here. Next, we need to get to 2 screws that hold this panel in behind this panel. I like to just release this enough to expose the screws because all these panels off to the side here overlap each other. So we'll just grab a hold of this panel and just unclip what we need to. Sometimes clips will pop off the back of these, and you just need to replace it before you snap it back in. With those 2 screws removed, this entire panel will unsnap from the dash. Might be handy to get the glove box out of the way for a moment. Once you get all the clips released, what I like to do sometimes is have some sort of cloth in the vehicle that we can put down on the console so we can let this stuff rest without scratching anything. On the back side here, there's 3 connectors that got to get disconnected. The small one up here, push the little release tab on the top and unplug it. These 2 connectors have the releases right on the bottom side in the center. So you'll push that and slide it out. This one, the release is more up towards the connector. It's a little bit harder to squeeze. The release is right there. And then that pops out. Once those 3 connectors are out, you can remove this panel and slide it out of the way. Now we'll need to disconnect these connectors because we're going to move this metal box out of the way to get to the module behind it. You just squeeze this clip on the top of this black connector and unplug it. And then this gray and black have little release tabs right on the top of them. Push that tab and slide them out. And then you need to use a removal tool to release the clips. They're holding the wire harnesses in. And then remove the 4 7mm screws holding it in. With the 4 screws removed, we'll grab a hold of the module, lift the harnesses, and slide it out of the way. The module that we need to replace is mounted above this plate right here. So this plate is holding it up, and we need to remove these 3 screws to drop it down. With the 3 screws removed, you can kind of pull on the tabs as they have little retention pieces that hold it up, and then pull this module down. It is a little tight in this area, so I'll do my best to show you, and then once we get it out, we'll go over the connectors. Right here is a black connector with a tab on the back. That one's going to be the tightest, so that's going to be the first one we release. So on the top back, push it with our finger and pop it out. And you see that gains us a bunch of room. Next, we'll remove this connector here. It's a large lever lock connector. So there's a release tab there where my finger is, and then we flip the lever all the way down to unplug it. Next, we'll release this cable right here. There's a little release tab right where my finger is. These can be a little tricky because of how small the release tabs are. So sometimes it might be handy to have something pointy to push in on the release tab and then unplug it. And you can see the release tab is right there. Do not pry or force any of these connectors. They should just come apart. This last connector here, there's this white release tab that we squeeze, and then we unplug that one as well. So with those disconnected, we'll slide this module out. Next, we need to remove this module and replace it with the one from 4D Tech by removing these 3 Phillips screws. Now we'll take the module that came with the 4D Tech kit and place it back on the bracket and put the screws in. Now we'll mount the module with the plate back in the opening. You want to slide it back in with the blue connectors kind of sticking out and the other end of the bracket in, and replace stuff in the same order we took it off. So we'll take this small blue and white connector back here and plug that in. Make sure that this wire is swiveled in a way where it isn't hitting the body of the module, so you're not stopping it from clipping in all the way. You want to make sure these clip in all the way. Then we'll take this connector here, push that in until it clicks. And then large 54 pin connector with the lever all the way open, put it in the opening, press it in till the lever starts to move, and then use your finger to activate the lever. As we're waking up modules in the vehicle while things are disconnected, you may get some errors on the cluster. That stuff will self-reset once everything is back together. We'll swivel this. We got to get this black connector reconnected last. And now we just got to reposition this bracket back in the opening and push it back up so all the screws line up. There's these little holding tabs here next to the screws that will hold the bracket up in place. And then now we'll replace this with the 3 screws we took out earlier. Now we'll start reassembling in the reverse order that we took stuff apart. We'll want to lift up all the harnesses here, slide this box back in, and align it in the opening, and then put the 4 screws back in. With the screws back in, we'll reconnect this module. These connectors will only go back in one way. So the black one, gray one, and then the small black one over here. And then we'll clip the clips back in as well. Next, we need to put this panel back in that we removed earlier. We'll want to reconnect the 3 connectors we had taken out. And then you'll want to get this end behind this panel down here. And then snap the panel back on. Once that panel is snapped back on, we'll want to replace the 2 screws here. Then with those 2 screws replaced, we'll snap the panel back in. And then next, we'll replace the 2 screws underneath here that we took out earlier. And then put this under dash panel back on. It has 3 hooks that hook in the back first, and then you flip it up and snap it in. Next, we need to reassemble the console. So we'll put this plate back in first. We do need to reconnect the USB port. panel back in place and then put this connector back in down here. And then we need to put the sides back on the console. Start with the driver's side here. You want to slide it down in between the seat. The easiest thing to do is to get these two spots aligned first because they're easy to see. Once you get those spots aligned, then you can start snapping it on. And then we'll need to replace the 8mm screw that we took out down here earlier. And then snap the cover plate back on. Now we'll reinstall the passenger side panel. Once you have the center ones aligned, the rest will all just snap in. And then we need to place these controls back in last. Plug back in both connectors down low. And then make sure you catch this lever lock one here. Just like the larger connector, make sure the lever lock is open all the way. Push in and allow the lever lock to pull it the rest of the way until it locks. This panel will clip in the back side of the console, slide down, and then snap in. Now we need to replace the two screws we took out inside this opening earlier. Now we'll put these vent pieces back in. And while we're putting them back in, we need to reconnect the connector into the back of the hazard switch. And then reinstall the two screws here. Then we'll put back in this upper trim piece. And we just need to plug back in this small connector on the back of the controls. And then reinstall these two screws here. Lastly, we'll install the touch screen in the opening. And put the 3 screws back in the back side of the screen. Then lastly, we replace the screw cover panel on the back. Next, we need to run the flash programmer that came with the conversion. This makes a simple programming change to the vehicle to accept the kit. The rest of the parts of the kit are custom programmed by us before we ship them to you. You'll need to turn on the ignition to run this programmer. Once the ignition is on, you'll take the programmer and plug it into the diagnostic port underneath the dash. It will blink purple a few times, blink blue while it's programming, and then turn solid green when it's done. And then you'll just remove the programmer and shut off the ignition. Now we'll start up the new 8-inch system for the first time. This system is available with CarPlay and Android Auto, and also an optional Ford navigation as well. Both versions are capable of Google Maps and Waze through the CarPlay Android Auto. The existing USB hub in the vehicle supports those systems. You retain all your current features, including the steering wheel controls, backup camera, Ford Pass, etc. with this upgrade. Thank you for checking out our video installing the 4-inch to 8-inch conversion in the 2020 Plus Escape. I'm Scott with 4D Tech.